Yes, WCQ season is over. Now what? Well, it's time to do it all over again. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out more. I was kind of, we're done with the competitive season, at least for those of us that aren't going to Worlds, those of us that are bad at the game. This is kind of where we get to recharge a little bit, and we start the national grind season back up here in August with the return back to regionals and a slower part of the competitive season. But that doesn't mean that Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself is done. One of the big coming points later on this year is, Magnificent Monsters, where, you can pull them serialized cards. Yes, give us your money. That's what Konami is saying right now. And, we're sitting here kind of looking around, kind of waiting on the ban list right now. So it's that transitory period where if you've got cards that you don't necessarily think you're going to want to have, this is a good time to kind of consider getting rid of them. When we hit the off season like this, it's important to remember that, certain cards typically go down because of the tins. This is actually, I think, the first year where we're probably going to see a maintenance or maintaining boundary of these cards, because we know that there are going to be some reprints this year, but that dip that really hits every year with the reprints, there's no tins this year. So that dip, while it might exist, I think this is going to be the first year where product is going to kind of maintain. While the tins were a good product to get players excited and get players into the game, they were also bad for the shelf life of Yu-Gi-Oh! Product. And as much as we have loved tins for years, kind of counterbalancing things a little bit more this year so that the LGS experience is better, kind of makes things a little bit better. So while, like I said, this is a decent point to consider getting rid of some of your high-end staples if you don't plan on playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while, but the problem is, if you're planning on coming back into this game in 3 months, the reality is, I don't think those staples are going to get you much cheaper. Well, what about the winners packs? Harmonia, Crown, while this is true, those, and I think most of the community kind of agrees, those are not really reprints. They're a luxury item, I would say. So like if you get a Harmonia that's stamped, one, you're going to have to go get either 3 more stamped Harmonias to keep your playset looking the same, or you're going to have to go sell it. And then you're going to have to kind of go through the hoops of finding the people that actually want these cards. That's another thing to kind of think about here is, if you do get these, what's going to be the optimal, dump off? Like, I just had a friend pull a Miscellaneous Ceratosaurus. He sold it for $20. He was like, it's not one of the hotter cards, but like, I don't want to have to deal with the BS of trying to, dump this thing. Get your free $20, call it a day, and I think it's going to be a lot of the winner's experience. Once again, though, they look like reprints, but some locals only got a few of those packs. It's a pool of 40 cards. Some of these locals are never going to see some of the cards from this pack. Take a second to think about that, because there is so much available, and we don't even know if there's an emphasis on short prints in this. That'll be data that I don't think I will ever actually get the chance to see globally across the board. Is everything even, or are things like the Harmonia and so forth, are those harder to actually pull? So that's a topic, a conversation that a lot of players don't really want to have. It is a promotional product, it is not a core set product. Short prints can in fact exist. So as I honestly, I'm more impressed with the discussion here on, is it worth it to sell your staples right now and, shift on into this, and what's the outlook in 3 to 6 months as a player that wants to take a break to either go to college, go live life, go live with family, actually touch grass and actually have a good time, what is the competitive outlook on that, 3 to 6 months on a downward break? That's not really. The question is, one, what does Magnificent Monsters bring us? What does the how, when, where, why, how on the secondary half of this set? What are they going to port in with that? And then the other question is, when do we see the toon stuff? Because we know on the horizon there's a giant power creep of toons. But the thing is, right now, we don't know when we're going to have the Revolution booster stuff. You know, the Unchained, the Witchcrafter stuff. Those particular decks right now are kind of running through Japan, and they're kind of tearing things up. But we're going to have not everything that Japan has. We're actually pretty far behind on synchronizing with their card pool. You know, Revolution booster, and then the second half of the Magnificent set, you know, is going to be nowhere to be seen. We'll have Beyond the Brave by that time, which, you know, it's looking like it's probably going to take another 9 months to kind of resynchronize the card pools, at least to a decent overlap yet again. So that's something to kind of think about here, right? Depending on, you know, when we get the Toon stuff, will, I think, really depend on the staple aspect of things to kind of consider. It also gives you, you know, a fair time to go look at certain things like Rizal and Gordian Slicer, both very impactful cards for that era. You know, if you want to get ahead of the curve and, you know, get Rizal stuff right now, everybody else is kind of doing it. You know, everybody's like, well, we don't know when we're going to see these cards, but I would rather be safe than sorry. So... preparation versus not being prepared. If you want to cash out of the game temporarily and take your luck and hope that the same reprint chronicles and the same dip occurs with a lack of the Megatons, then go for it. If you think, well, maybe I'm going to kind of hold on to my stuff because, you know, there's no real reprint windows right now, so I don't know how it's going to go, then you risk the cards losing money over time. That's always the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And unfortunately, these cards are worth things. You know, they are always going to be viewed as assets by a lot of the player base. And it's because, you know, I hate to tell you this, the average person, when they buy into Yu-Gi-Oh, they like their cards being worth money. They like having, you know, that, oh, well, you know, maybe if I lose 10%, sure, you know, but I can get that money back. You know, people don't like having that mentality. They like, you know, Pokemon being worthless, but at the same time, you know, you're putting less money into this game. Unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh is not that styled. It is an asset class game. You know, these cards have value, and at the rate we're going, I mean, things are only going up. Same thing with quarter centuries right now. You know, if you have quarter centuries and you're looking to sell them right now, honestly, I think that's a bad idea. I feel like there is an opportunity just to wait another year and see where more of this, you know, kind of builds up on the QCRs, because still every day it's a different story with these QCRs. Something peaks up a little bit more in the QCR department. I don't know why people still to this day are surprised when they log in and go, wow, you know, I can't believe that we just saw a spike in, you know, this quarter century. Why is that happening? It's the collector's market, people. You can, you know, reprint market is one thing, you know, but the competitive market is another. The collector's market, whether or not the cards are competitive, collectible or not, they still are going to be looked at by the competitive players as like, maybe I want to pick up QCRs. Maybe I want to have these for the actual conversation of wanting to play them from this era. I agree with you. I think there is something to be said about these collectibles, you know, for the QCRs. But so I know there's a lot to unpack here. You know, should you sell your cards right now? You know, what if you want to take a break? You know, what is the best course of all this? This is everything that we've looked at in this video. And I do hope that this answers some of the questions, because I'm not sure what the future brings over these next 6 months. You know, there's a lot of uncertain questions. You know, we do know that, you know, we have another big set coming here for the World Championship Celebration that has more awesome arts available to it that is going to be simul-released. We do even know further down the line that, you know, Sinful Spoils is up on the block for the anime in the future. So there might even be a Chronicles deck for that. You know, we're only speculating on that because we don't really know. But I guess that's one thing. If you want to dump, you know, Sinful Spoils cards, that is a coin flip too, because if it's Chronicles deck, then they go down the crapper. If there's no Chronicles deck, then they go up. So, you know, you kind of pick your battle on that one. Either way, there will be winners, there will be losers. I see the story all the time, but just some rationale right now. So I don't know what to do. I obviously, you know, if you're not going to play, make the best decision for yourself. If you are going to play, I don't know if things are going to get cheaper. Honestly, it's one of the biggest coin flips of the block. And with that, I bid you guys adieu. Have a good rest of your day, all right? Patrons! Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.